he is throwing the guitar neck out, I jumped through the crowd, landed with both hands attached to the guitar neck.
It's epic.
Thank you.
It's like a museum.
And I begged her, let's go to Vegas and let's let Gene and Paul marry us. This record, which is Damaged, his first one that he did with Black Flag, I'm always looking for what's next, what's more. The thrill of chase as a collector. I love the chase.
All right, we better get started on the interview.
Yeah, we should. So my parents were diehard Elvis Presley fans. And when I was 3 years old, we traveled to Las Vegas and they took me to see Elvis Presley when I was 3. So that was kind of the early beginnings, but there was always records around. We had 8 tracks and all that good stuff. I remember the Ventures, the Beatles, and then eventually like the Eagles and other bands. So that was part of my growing up, was my parents certainly were into music. And eventually my mom took us to see Kiss in first grade. It's Judas Priest opening for them in 1979 in Huntington, West Virginia. So first grader, seeing Kiss, coming back to school the next day with my Kiss t-shirt, and that was it. And everybody's like, oh, you saw Kiss? So it was pretty awesome. Diehard Kiss fan since I saw the album cover of Destroyer when I'm gonna go with five or six, something like that. A friend of my dad's brought it over and I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and he's like, "No, just keep it." So at that point I was full in Kiss fan. That's a rare one too. This one's awesome though. So when I went to school in Southern Ohio, the music there was country music and pop. There was not metal in Southern Ohio at the time. I had a cousin that lived in Columbus, and I would go visit him. He's a couple years older than I was. But I would come back from visits in Columbus, Ohio with dub tapes of Slayer's Rain of Blood and Metallica's Kill 'Em All and Ride the Lightning and all this stuff. And I was pretty young. But I had a few friends that I would turn it on to, and then it started spreading. So we built this metal community together down there in Southern Ohio in the early to mid 80s. At that point, it was, you're a poser if you're listening to Motley Crue and something, and then hair metal came along. It's like, oh, this is terrible, you're not caught dead with a Poison shirt on. I have grown to really appreciate bands like that lately, but back in the day, you didn't listen to that. In later life, I became a born-again Christian and decided that maybe I needed to thin back a little bit on the collection. So Slayer went by the wayside and really went heavier into Metallica and Megadeth and just kind of shifted away from them. But their early stuff was amazing. Just the imagery, though, and the lyrical content and everything. It's just a little too much for me trying to build my faith in Christ. So I had to make a change at some point.
Makes sense.
Yeah. But eventually I started getting into collecting vinyl. And Kiss vinyl at the time, this was when they didn't have makeup on. So this was mid to late 80s. Kiss vinyl was affordable then. And I would buy Kiss vinyl everywhere I would go. I would buy memorabilia. Eventually it got to the point where I had a Kiss shrine. Kiss was doing their Kiss conventions in the 90s, and they were actually doing weddings at Kiss conventions. So Kiss was doing a convention in Las Vegas on the date that we had established for our wedding date, and I begged her, let's go to Vegas, let's let Gene and Paul marry us. And she absolutely refused. So the next best thing was to get a copy of History. This was a wedding gift for my wife in 1995 when we got married, because back then I just graduated college and I was a poor young man, and the book was like $150 back then. So this one was signed by the lineup at the time, which did not include Ace and Peter, but over time I've gotten it signed by Ace and Peter and Vinnie Vincent as well. So it's got Gene and Paul and Bruce Kulick and Eric Singer. So I've been trying to get all the members that I can in the History book as well. But yeah, this was a wedding gift for my wife. At that point I knew it was meant to be. Then my son was born in 97, took him up to Columbus to meet Megadeth in 97. Or maybe in 98, it was Ozfest, I think it was 98. Continued on that vein, got him into metal as well. So he and I both collect. It's something fun we do together, and it's just a passion of both of ours. When I was growing up, you listen to Metallica, and you would see them wear Misfits shirts. So I'm like, okay, maybe I need to check out the Misfits. And then I started listening to them, and it's like, this is some pretty cool stuff. But that's how I found bands like Obituary and Sepultura, and so I was just looking at the other bands and what shirts were they wearing.
Man made of sand, turned to glass by light of a land with atomic
my boy Vince. Got to represent. So some of the autographs that I've had to purchase, because at the time I wasn't a collector, or unfortunately the artists have been deceased. I picked up some pretty big pieces. The Metallica Ride the Lightning record signed with Cliff Burton, that's a big one. I also have Metallica's first promo photo. Also the Ozzy and Randy piece that I had mentioned, the autographed record, that is one of the crown jewels in the collection. The Led Zeppelin piece that you saw with the 2 records that are signed, one of them signed by John Bonham, the other one is signed by the other 3. To get a piece with all 4 of them on it, $25,000 or so. I paid a fraction of that and was able to get the 2 records and frame them together. That way it's kind of still one piece, which makes it cool. But for me, getting the Sabbath record, didn't get that one signed in person either, but it is certified, so I have confidence in it, and I've studied the autographs enough that I know that it's real. But that was another one that I needed to add to the collection. Van Halen, as you think about the passing of Eddie, just crippling. I always had this vision that I was going to meet Eddie Van Halen and do some sort of meet and greet or whatever it took to be able to get my stuff signed. But the next best thing after he passed away was to go in and purchase them. The poster that you saw earlier, that was one that used to hang on my wall when I was a kid. Eventually time took it away from me. Don't know what happened to it, but somebody was selling that on eBay. Again, I don't like to buy up there, but it works for me sometimes. So I was able to get that one off of eBay, and it's certified and signed. So it's just really cool to have that memory of that poster when I was back in 1983 on my wall, staring at it, wishing I could play like that. So it was very cool to add that to my collection. So I'm looking for statement pieces, and to me, that's one of them. We'll stay with Kiss, actually. I caught a guitar neck from a show in Charleston, West Virginia. I had 4th row seats, so whenever he goes to the end of the show and breaks the guitar, I know exactly what's going to happen. I went to the front row, and everybody's up on the rail at that point. So I'm running across their seats on the front row. And as he is throwing the guitar neck out, I jumped through the crowd, landed with both hands attached to the guitar neck. Pretty good odds there, but there's 7 other dudes and a girl that were all fighting for this guitar neck. So got to the point where it was down to me and a couple of guys and this girl, and I'm just trying to shake it and get it loose from them. Everybody's grabbing at it. Got to the point where I got it down to one guy and the girl, and this girl was determined to get this guitar neck. She actually bit me on the chest. So if I let go to try and pull her off of my chest, I'm going to lose the guitar because everybody else is still grabbing at it. So I'm trying to elbow her in the head to get her to stop biting me. And my buddy saw what was happening. He came from the 4th row and came in and just gave her a little karate chop to the back of the neck. She went down. I've got the guitar. We're both holding it up. My shirt's ripped. I'm bleeding, but I've got the guitar. So that was a pretty fun concert experience, to say the least. My wife swears that I need a tetanus shot, but I never got one, and I'm still alive. So I think we're good. So I did a meet and greet with Kiss in 2014. Pretty pricey, but well worth the money. They were signing items for you, and they were just basically walking around the rope, and they would sign 3 or 4 things. So the guitar neck, when I showed it to the venue, security was checking in, and they were seeing what you had, and they're like, yeah, no instruments are allowed. So well, this isn't an instrument. This is a broken guitar neck. And so, you can't play it. He said, no instruments allowed. Take it back to your car. So I'm not taking it back to my car. So tucked it in, had it basically in my pant leg. Got into the venue. They lined us up for the autographs. I had it out and I was ready to go. So Paul came through and he signed a record for me. He signed it was 2 records that he signed for me, and I pulled out the guitar neck. The security guy that told me up front was standing over there. I had no idea. He's yelling from across the venue, I told you to get that out of here. So Paul stopped the security guard. He's like, wait, he asked nicely if I would sign this for him, because I did. I said, Paul, I caught this at a show. Do you mind signing it? Paul stopped the security guard and said, back off. He asked nicely, I'm going to sign this for him. So he did. So that was pretty amazing.
Tell me about meeting Henry Rollins. Is this your first meetup with him ever?
This is, and it's put a lot of time into it. And that's the thing, you've got to be diligent, you've got to be persistent, but continue to stand out there. Eventually I knew he had to get on that bus. So I went up to Henry and said, hey, you mind signing a few records? He's like, how many you got? I said, 3. He's like, I'll sign 2. And I said, well, I've got some money for you. He's like, put that away. Money runs everything. So he signed 2 records for me, didn't take my money. Just an awesome dude, though. And we talked for a few minutes about this record, which is Damaged, his first one that he did with Black Flag. We were talking about this version. This is the first press. and the first press was censored, and they tried to get the band to stop from putting it out. So the band instead put a label over the portion of the record company that was trying to censor it and said, as a parent, I found it as an anti-parent record. That was the statement that was made by MCA Records, who did not want them to distribute this record. So I asked Henry about it, and I said, how many of these did you guys actually sticker? He said that he and Raymond Pettibone, who was Greg Ginn, the guitarist's brother, who did a lot of the artwork for Black Flag, he said that he and Raymond stickered somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 of these. So I'm glad that I finally got to the bottom of how many copies are out there, because there's been anywhere from 2,000 to 15,000 is what people were saying. But directly from Henry Rollins, somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500, and he and Raymond Pettibone were the two that stickered them. So at some point, he may have touched this record in the past before he signed it for me again. But very cool encounter with Henry Rollins.
How did you get the drum, and how many signatures were on it when you first got it?
So when I bought the drum, a friend of mine who actually was a former business partner with Dave Ellefson, I'm not going to name names here, but he became a friend of mine because he was selling some Megadeth items, and I got in touch with him. I bought a few things from him. He contacted me and said, oh, by the way, Chuck Baylor, who was the drummer for So Far So Good So What, said Chuck is looking to sell a few things. He only has a few things left, unfortunately, but would you be interested in what he's selling? What's he have? He has a tom from his touring kit over in Europe from the So Far So Good So What tour. And it was the last surviving tom, the last piece of his drum set that he had from Megadeth. He lives in Michigan, and I was able to drive up there and buy the tom from him. He wrote on the head itself, the last piece of the touring kit. He said somebody broke into his house and stole all his stuff. Stole his gold record award, his drum set. That tom was something they were using as like a little side table. So they had crap sitting on top of it, and the person that stole everything didn't know that tom was over there. So it is the surviving piece of that drum set. So Chuck signed a head for me when I bought it, signed a bunch of other things. Great guy, great guy. So at that point I was on a mission. I knew I had to get that signed by the entire lineup. Then we find out Dave Mustaine is doing a signing in Nashville. So the Mustaine signing was around his A Tout Le Monde beer. And if you registered in advance at a place called Frugal McDougal's in Nashville, if you registered in advance, you were the first 100, you could bring one item to get signed. So thankfully I got Austin and I registered, and we were able to get down there. Ironically though, when we showed up, the window was from 2 to 4 for the autograph session. We had physical inventory at work that day. So I left immediately from work. Probably broke some speed limit laws, but we did get there about 3:45. So I'm thinking, sweet, we got 15 minutes, we're good. We walk into Frugal McDougal's, Dave's gone. Oh my gosh, I was crippled. So I asked the managers, what's going on? I said, well, Dave left a little bit early, the line is dying down, so he's gone. I said, but you can go talk to this lady over here, she's with Dave, and see if he's truly out of the parking lot. So it was his daughter, Electra. Yes, so when Electra emailed me to tell me that the drum had been signed and it was ready to ship back to me, she asked for my address and said, shipping's gonna be about $50. That's awesome, I'll cover it, no worries. So when she was boxing it up, she was talking to her dad about it. So Dave said, I remember buying that set for Chuck. It's kind of funny. He didn't give a lot of details, but he remembered buying the set for him, and it was cool to see the drum again, is what he had said.
How did it come to fruition that you could finally get the last two missing signatures for this tom?
So Ellefson was doing an autograph session in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and my drum was currently at the Mustaine residence. We had 2 days to go before the Fort Wayne signing, so I am sweating this. Thankfully, Electra shipped it when she said she did, but when we got there, I was able to get Dave Ellefson to sign the drum. So Dave also remembered this drum set. He's like, oh yeah, I remember Chuck playing that. It was the European set only. So yeah, I've seen pictures of Europe only. So he didn't have that set in the US. So we went over to Europe, we had to buy new gear because we weren't packing everything up and taking it over. So that was another neat story that he had remembered the drum. So then you flash forward to Jeff Young. So I knew this was my opportunity with Kings of Thrash in Phoenix. Took a layover from a work trip and stayed in Phoenix overnight. Brought the drum with me, which my shoulders are still a little sore because it's a little heavy after a while carrying that and all the records and stuff that I brought with me.
Remember when he got that, Mustaine was like, it looks like f***ing living room furniture, man.
He couldn't wait for him to get the sonar kick because that's what the guy in Merciful Fate used. And then when he showed up, it was Babingo.
It sounded killer, though.
Well, Babingo had the top of his hot.
It sounded killer.
He was having a good time with it, and just recollecting the memories that he had and Dave Ellefson from when they were touring overseas. It was really cool to hear that. I have stories with each one of them I've gotten signed in person. It's just the memories. And for my son, eventually you'll inherit the collection, and he will know the stories behind it as well, and he can pass that through a generation or two. But the thrill of the hunt, when you're not doing a paid autograph, it's, am I going to get it or not? Is he going to sign? Is he going to walk by me? You know, am I in the right spot? You just never know. And it's that hunt, like I mentioned before. If you're hunting for a specific record, it's the hunt of getting something signed. And is it going to work? How's the signature going to look? Are they going to tell me to go piss off? You never know what's going to happen. So it's kind of exciting. It's thrilling. And then when you get a chance to meet the artists, most of them are really cool, really down to earth, and they just appreciate the fact that you bought their records and that you want to take time to get them to sign it.
It looks original.
It is. Oh yeah. Again, you just don't want to wait. You need to get it taken care of while the artists are still here. Go see them, go support them, go get their autographs, because you never know when they're not going to be around. As well, the old hard school punk. That's a new genre.
It's a new genre.
It's a new genre. Hard school
Folk
punk.
metal, and then
You heard it here.
hard school.
Hard school punk. What do you mean you're back? What, you went through the line already?
He told us to get back in line. That was his fault.
I don't remember him telling us to get back in line.
That's why you said we're getting back in line, because he's like, you want more, you get back
I
in
said we're
line.
getting back in line.
No, Dave said it too, I swear.
I didn't hear that. Regardless, we go through the line and I was like, hey, Dave, we're back. And Dave's like, we're on the same team, man. What are you doing? Other people are trying to get autographs too. I'm like, oh, so we were done. We were cooked. We saw Angry Dave come up. So at that point, he was signing this as he was yelling at us. So we still got it though, so it was worthwhile.